Hi, this is part 3 of the NuTone Model 2500 stereo receiver repair and rebuild. I'm working on the power supply board today. As you can see, I've got it dismantled and opened up, and if I zoom in on the power supply board, which is here, let it focus, you can see a lot of burnt components. And I'm going to move around to the back, and you can take a look at the back of the circuit board if I can find it. There it is, and we'll let it focus in, and there's a lot of burnt area right in here actually, and some of the interconnect wires, like this little blue one right here, it's actually mostly desoldered. It's kind of a mess. Sorry about the handheld thing, but it's easier to do it this way as I go than just try to set it up on a tripod. The other thing I did to make access on this a little easier is I took out the intercom board and the preamp board. I marked all of the interconnect cables. Fortunately, these two boards have all plug-in connections, so I can unplug them and just move this whole panel off out of the way, which gives me more access to work on this. And you can see here I put wire markers on all of the interconnect cables so I know where they go, because as you can see, it's quite a rat's nest of wires. And then over here is my cheat sheet. I've got drawings with numbers of where things go. I also took pictures of it with my camera, so I can post it on the website, but also just to refer back to if I need to know. So that's it for now. Onto the power supply board, more shortly. Alright, so a little time has passed, and you can see I've depopulated the large capacitors off the power supply board. I did this first mostly just to get them out of the way so I can work on all of the burned components. I'm going to replace all of the resistors, all of the diodes, and rebuild the board completely. Some of these wires, this one, the insulation is burnt off. This one's in pretty bad shape. This one's, the insulation's all falling off the wire, so I have to do something with those. And then over here, so here's our array of power supply capacitors. These are the original Sprague off the center of the board. So just to give you an idea of how things have changed in the world, these two will be replaced with these. These are Sprague Atoms, which I like. They're a good size. One of the big considerations on a rebuild like this is space. There's not a lot of space on the board. There's not a lot of space in the chassis, so you have to find things that will fit and not take up more room than the original. I measured these while the capacitance on these were still very close. The ESR is very high, which is bad. These are 1500. These are not multi-section cans. These are single large section capacitors. I think they used these because it was ease of manufacturing. These are 1500 microfarad at 50 volts. This one, they both measure the proper capacitance. The ESR on this one is really high. This one's not too bad. But to show you how things have changed, both of these are going to be replaced with those. So that's how much smaller things have gotten. These are the same rating as these. So it'll be a little bit of a challenge to get them mounted on the board, but it's a good choice because they fit well. And then the real challenging one is this one. This is a 4-section can capacitor. It's got 2 sections are 500 microfarad at 80 volts, one is 500 at 50 volts, and the last one is 200 at 50 volts. And of course, these are not available any longer. I measured these. 2 of the capacitors inside the can are open completely, so they're not doing anything. The other 2, while the capacitance is close to in spec, the ESR is really high on both of them, about 6 times what it should be, so this is toast. And what I'm going to do with this is these and these and these are all going to get put inside this can and go back on the circuit board, and I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done doing it before I close it up. So more to do, more video later. Hi, a couple hours have passed and I've got all of the small components replaced on the power supply board. This was the end where everything was burnt, so every single component was replaced. And if we move around and look at the back, you can see it's still discolored, but it's all been cleaned up. All of the traces have been stitched back together properly and all the new components soldered in. I've still got the large capacitors to do. Down at the bottom of the board there's some rectifier diodes down there that are a little hard to see, and some big 3 amp rectifier diodes. Those are the primary diodes for the power supply. As a note, in the service manual they don't call them out as 3 amp diodes, they just show them as standard 4002 diodes. They should be like 1N5408s or 1N5404s are fine. So making good progress on it. Got a lot of it cleaned up. Here are all the parts that have been changed out so far. Now I'm off to work on the large capacitors. Back soon. Hi. So progress is coming along nicely. I lucked out on the two 1500 microfarad 50 volt caps, which were the big black ones that were mounted down on the bottom of the board. I chose these Mallory snap ends, and it turns out that the leads on them were the right spacing where I could pick up the ground and the one center pin without having to modify anything, so that was kind of nice. And then up here are the 2 Sprague Atoms. They're the ones that replace the orange ones, and same value, about the same height but smaller diameter. Little heat shrink tubing, mounted them the same way the other one was. Make sure you fold the leads over on the back of the board when you solder them to give them more strength. And now we're off to the multi-section CAN capacitor. Back in a bit. Hi, so I'm starting work on the multi-section CAN capacitor, and I thought I'd show you what's inside one of these. I just cut the lid off of it, and this is what you find inside of it. This one looks particularly bad. There's some kind of white powdery stuff all over the inside. This top piece is a piece of foam, which I guess keeps it from rattling around inside the can or something, and it all seems kind of nasty. These things also smell really bad when you open it up, so not sure what it's all about inside other than it's bad. So I'm going to take it all apart, put new parts inside, and I'll show you what it looks like before I close it back up. That's it. Okay, so it's reveal time. This is like on those reality TV shows where they build things and then bring the people in to look at it. So here's our CAN capacitor. Looks pretty ordinary on the outside, but when you open it up, inside, it's been restuffed. So what's in here is, there are 2, so we have to achieve original values. That's the goal of this. So here we have, there are 4 sections. So these 2 make up one section. That's the equivalent of 500 microfarad at 80 volts. This is a duplicate. This is 500 microfarad at 80 volts. This one and this one create 500 at 50 volts. And this last one is 200 at 50 volts. So this only has a single one. These are doubled up to increase the capacitance so it matches the original value. The goal of doing this is to try to fit it all inside the can. A lot of NuTone intercom systems made in the 60s and 70s use these type of cans. The thing that's more challenging about this one is these are higher voltage than most other models, so the capacitors are larger, so it's harder to fit it in the same size of can. But if you do it carefully and you plan it out properly, you can actually slide the cap back on, line it back up with the original cut. When I get done with this now, what I do is I'll wrap the seam with a layer of electrical tape and then put a piece of heat shrink tubing over it to seal it up. put it back on the board, it'll look like it's always been that way. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm all done. So here it is, all sealed up. I wrapped the seam with electrical tape. I used some large heat shrink tubing just to seal over the electrical tape. It also makes it look a little more finished. Now I'm going to put it back on the board, and my power supply board rebuild will be done. So the next go around, I'm going to start on the end. I'm going to sort of put it back together temporarily and try it out and see if we have improvement over our initial testing. I think we probably will, and then we'll move on to working on the rest of the boards. So that's all for today. I hope you find this video interesting and perhaps helpful. If you did, please like it on YouTube, give it a thumbs up like that, and if you have questions or comments, leave them down below and I'll answer them. See you soon. Bye. Wait, I forgot one more thing. Here's the board. Here's the multi-section can capacitor reinstalled on the board, and the board is remounted into the chassis, and all of the wires, some of the wires, the insulation was burned off of them as much as an inch from the board, and further down it was really toasty. So in those kind of situations, I grafted on some new wires and made some splices and covered them in heat shrink tubing, but virtually the whole entire board has been rebuilt, so it should be good for another 30 years. We'll get this thing put back together and see how it works. Okay, this time that is it. Bye.